All right, everybody, welcome back to the Fancave. I'm here with Brian. We today are going to talk about the Rocky IV Director's Cut. I just recently watched it. Brian, you actually saw it in the movie theater, which is awesome. So
Crowded theater.
that's awesome. I'd love to see Rocky in a crowded theater.
It was. And I was like in the back row, and I could watch everyone. And it was interesting because before the movie, they were simulcasting live from Philadelphia where they were doing the premiere. And so Stallone came out and did a pre-screening interview with Ben Mankiewicz from Turner Classic Movies.
Nice.
Yeah. So he kind of explained the stuff that was going on and what made him do it. But yeah, it was neat to see it in the theater. And that's why I think I told you, because that long prologue of Rocky III, I'm like, I really want to watch Rocky III on the big screen again.
So I think maybe we'll get into it. We talk about like what we liked, what we didn't like, so on and so forth. Thinking about Rocky and the SAG, I mean, Rocky's hits very close to home, I think, for both of us. We grew up, I mean, it was Star Wars, Rocky, Indiana Jones.
I think Rocky is as impactful to you and I as was Star Wars.
Yeah, I agree.
As is Star Wars.
I agree.
I mean, especially when you consider that that's the first movie I saw inside a theater.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that the UA4 in Tyler? My dad had a day off. It was raining. I mean, I don't remember much about the movie other than him drinking eggs and there was a fight at the end.
Uh-huh.
But
yeah.
But
I remember seeing Rocky. I don't think I saw Rocky 1 or 2 in a movie theater. I do remember seeing Rocky 3 and going from there. I
remember showing you Rocky for the first time at my house.
Yeah. Okay. Then that's where I saw it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you had seen 3, and then like CBS used to show like 2 and 3 a lot. And so you would tape both of them. Mm-hmm. And then so I'm like, and I think we're like in probably 7th, 8th grade. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, and I had taped a version off of, I want to say like HBO or something like that while I was homesick. And I'm like, come over and watch it.
Yeah. I remember that now. I didn't remember that until you started bringing it up. But, the cool thing about Rocky is, I think for us, it was a lot of narrative of things that we would say to each other. I know, we would talk at the gate at my fence and at my window, and there'd be a lot of, hey yo's and across the ways and stuff like that.
Hey yo, I'll call you later.
Yeah. And
I'll sweat you.
One of the cool things, and we had talked about this off topic, but I think one of the best experiences and cool experiences of my life was like getting a phone call from you telling me, hey, there's an opportunity for us to be in the Rocky Balboa movie. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And when I
still get jazzed about that. I watched the preview for all the movies last night on Amazon. And it's like 12 midnight. And I'm like, I should watch Rocky Balboa. Yeah. I have to be up at 6, but I should watch Rocky Balboa tonight.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll finally see us.
Yeah. Well, I remember you had talked to Dusty, and I think he had told you or you had told him or whatever, but the message got back to me and you said, Mike, do you have a suit? Because we're going to show up in suits. And I was like, why are we going to show up in suits? And then you explained it to me explain why we would needed to go in suits.
Yeah, because they said if you wear a suit, there's a possibility that you could sit ringside.
Yes. So I'm like, yeah, I got a suit. I got a suit, dude.
And I remember, and so you got off work. I got off work for something. I think we left like at 8 o'clock at night from your place in Redlands and went up to Vegas. And I want to say that we listened to like every Rocky song that there was.
I believe
including pushing, getting ready for the fight. Sing it's Frank. Yeah. Of which less than 24 hours later, you're hanging out with Frank Stallone. Yeah. I mean, more or less.
Yeah, I mean,
put it this way: he was as close to you as some of those toys are to you right now.
So was the Burt Young.
Yep.
Yeah.
But hey, we both got to shake Burt's hand.
Both got to shake his hand.
But you know what I remember about that is he was leaving. That guy was trying to usher him out, and like we were the last 2 people. And he's like, Mr. Young, you really need to go. And he pushed him out, and like out of the corner of his eye, he saw us go. And he's like, wait a minute. And he came back over. He goes, how's it going, fellas? And he shook our hands. And I looked at you. I looked over you. You're standing on the right of me. And you have this look on your face like you're in the third grade.
Yeah.
And just like, I just met Paulie.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And I mean, I'm sure I did too, but I saw you.
Yeah. That
and then we drove home.
Yeah.
But what a great day.
It was awesome. I remember when they were letting everybody into the theater. I do remember them saying, "Okay, you guys this way," and we were like, "Yes, the suits." And we were what, third row?
We were the third row. We had to sit behind the SAG extras, and those people were just lunatics. And then, but the funny thing is Dusty tells me, he goes, "Oh, I really wish I could go. I really wish I could go." And I remember, so we get up to Vegas, and I want to say this is pre-texting, so it's like we got cell phones, but texting isn't really a thing yet. And so I call him, and he goes, "No way, you went?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh man." And then you and I were going to get like breakfast or something. I mean, and it was such an impromptu trip. We stayed at the Motel 6 or Motel 6 off of Tropicana.
Yeah.
And it was close to the Mandalay Bay, so we could get over to the event center. And so we're like going to breakfast, and my phone rings. It's Dusty. He goes, "Hey, where are you guys at?" And I'm like, "Oh, we're walking over." He goes, "Cool. I'm in a cab from the airport. I'll see you guys over there."
Yeah.
And he's like, "I couldn't let you guys go in." And so the three of us hung out.
Yeah.
But the cameras weren't good on the phones then.
Yeah.
And we were so afraid of getting kicked out. We actually followed the rules that no cameras. But somebody snuck a camera in, and there are pictures, and you put a link to it on the website. You probably have it.
Yeah.
But it's on my website. But you can see the back of our heads, and we're like,
yeah.
and you can totally tell it's us too.
But no words.
Yeah. Well, do you remember when you and I went to High Five and we missed?
Yeah.
So, can I tell one more story since we're talking about this?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the other thing that's great is within 20 feet, Sylvester Stallone is directing the pickup scenes for the final fight against him and Antonio Tarver, and at the monitors, and we can hear and see everything that's going on.
Yeah, we're literally 10, 15 feet from the HD TV that he had of like a 60-inch TV where he was videoing it, recording it, and then he would go over to the TV, 5 feet away from the ring, and he'd watch it, and then he would make adjustments and go from there. And it was.
I remember he came back from lunch, and he goes, "Play the music from the fight in Rocky 2." And he goes, "Yeah, that's the cadence I want to get to this." And then when you go to the movie, it's the same music from the fight in Rocky 2.
Yeah.
So,
that was awesome.
And Carrot Top showed up. Remember Carrot Top showed up and hung out?
Yeah.
And that's when you're like, dude, he really got buff.
Yeah, he was huge. Yeah, because he showed up. That was excellent time. Well, so it's a great time, but the one thing that really absolutely stands out in my mind is Frank Stallone is like hanging out by us, and there was one of the SAG extras was a very buxom woman, and so Frank kept talking to her, and then there was like this fat, sweaty extra guy, and he's sitting there, and Frank's talking to her, having a good time, and he's like, "Frank, take her to the trailer. The trailer, Frank. Take her to the trailer." And Frank's like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." He's like, "The trailer, Frank. Take her to the trailer." "Okay, shut up. All right. Well, what's up with this guy in the trailer?" "Frank, the trailer. Take her to the trailer." And this chick is getting so embarrassed. Yeah. And Frank's like, "Hey, look here, moron. I got a room in the hotel. If I'm taking her anywhere, it's upstairs." Yeah. And then the guy's like, "Oh." I'm like, dude, I don't know how much these SAG extras get paid, but unbelievable. And then it was just great. And then the other thing is that the guys that were playing the cornermen for Mason Dixon was a real cornerman, and then he wound up being in the corner for both the Creed movies. And so like, oh. Yeah. So it was. I mean, I know we're supposed to be talking about Rocky 4, but we're going to talk about Rocky 6. I mean, Rocky. It's just it's going to be about Rocky. But I remember
it's all about Rocky.
I remember watching Sylvester Stallone direct and being blown away by the transformation he would have between directing and then being Rocky. Like you could see that turn off the director and be the actor, and then okay, cut, and then he'd get back into it, and I remember sitting there thinking, we are in the perfect spot for everything because we're watching the fight, and 20 feet away from us, we're watching him in his being the director, saying what he likes, what he doesn't like. I want to do that over or whatever, and then going and fixing it. And it's like we're looking up, we're looking to the side, we're looking up, we're looking to the side, and it's like we were there in that process, like, and it was awesome. It wasn't just like the people that were on the other side who were like, "This, what are we just doing over here?" We got to see the whole process, which was awesome.
Oh, yeah, it was crazy. And then the other thing, if you remember, they were doing pickup shots at the end of the corner of his son talking to him, of Rocky looking for Adrian, and then Tony Burton's in there. Every time you hit him, you hurt him, but he said it wrong, and then they're catching that, and then Burt Young like, Rocco, the basement! And every time he'd call cut, all the extras would applaud, because you're like, I guess technically you're watching the last Rocky film, but it was funny because like, they knew it too, because that is just such bad form on a movie set.
Yeah.
For the extras to be applauding. Yeah. But you were part of Rocky.
You were part of it.
It's funny. And when you watch that movie, when Rocky comes into the arena and then Rocky leaves, they literally filmed that Saturday before we were there. We were there on a Friday, I believe, weren't we?
I think so. No, we were there wasn't it a Sunday?
No, it was the very end of the week.
Oh, okay.
Because so it was like a Thursday. It was very end of the week because I remember like and you're like, the only day I can go is this. I'm like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah.
And but when you watch that, he's literally going into the fight, and so there was a fight, an HBO fight at MGM that night.
Right, and he piggybacked on it
before. Yeah, so they had, and the fans of the real fight in the movie are going crazy for the fake fighter.
Yeah.
And that is just so cool,
brilliant.
And then the other thing that's really funny is over the ring in the arena is all these I guess flags with pictures of champions hanging on them. So Antonio Tarver has a flag in the arena where he's playing Mason the Line Dixon.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see it in the movie.
Yeah, and I remember behind us, because when we went for the pickups, it was only like they only did like 6-7 rows, right around the edge. But then behind us, it was like mannequins sitting in the chairs or inflatable dolls sitting there. And I remember looking at thing, God, like you don't realize in that movie making process, that's all in the background. They have no idea what's going on. And, you can see the mannequins just as a background. I don't think we were even in the movie, but it was just awesome to be part of it. You know what I mean?
But isn't it funny, though? It's like, I'll watch it, and I'll see people who were sitting like 3 seats away from us in the crowd. I'm like, they're so close.
Yeah, we were right there.
So close.
Yeah, we were right there.
And that's the thing, though, is I love the fact that I was in a Rocky movie. By the way, if you go on IMDb, Dusty Garza, M.E. Garza, because he has producing credits.
Yeah.
He added that he was an extra in Rocky
awesome.
Balboa on there. Awesome. And he said, I tried to add you too, but you didn't have any credits. Damn.
That's awesome.
I'm like, I'll get some credits then.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah. And before we go to Rocky Balboa, what do you think of the Creed movies?
The Creed movies were, I think the first Creed was good. I don't think the second one was as good as the first one, but I liked it. I mean, I own them both, so they're good. I just I don't know.
I absolutely love the first one. I thought the first one was I thought the first one was very spot on.
Right.
And there's something missing a little bit from the second one, but it's a good story, especially when you bring back Drago and his son, and even the ex-wife. Yeah, a little. No, she's in Balboa.
Oh yeah, that's Balboa. Sorry.
Yeah. But and that's the thing is, I'm wondering if when they were making Creed 2, if that's what got him thinking about revisiting Rocky 4.
Yeah, maybe.
Because something had to stimulate that, there's something not there. Maybe it was hanging out with Dolph. Because it's very clear that the big difference between original Rocky 4 and Rocky 4, the director's cut, which is a bizarre thing to say because he's the director of both, is that, Drago doesn't have a lot more lines, but he seems like a robot in the original. And in this one, he's got that, but he seems to be very under control. does he yes, no, and then they cut him off. And then I think that actually in the end when he gets mad in the last scene and he grabs the guy, and I think that actually makes that scene work better now.
Yeah. I kind of like the robotic Ivan Drago though. I mean, I guess hey, we're into it, so let's go into it.
Let's do it.
But yeah, there was. I think my expectations of the director's cut was, the original one was 131 minutes, and I think the director's cut comes in at 134 or something like that. So
yeah,
it's only 3 minutes
longer.
3 minutes longer. I was kind of hoping for like maybe a 2.5 hour movie where they didn't cut so much out. What they added was great. But I mean, they simplified.
No, hey, hold on. Let's stop on the they. The he. This is his movie.
Yeah, he simplified it. But I don't know.
I think he wanted to excise the robot the most, and in the beginning, that cost a lot of scenes, especially for Paulie and for Rocky Jr.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, my biggest thing, and I remember the previews. There were things, and we've talked about this, things in the previews that don't make it into the movies. Mm-hmm. And so there was that line with a boxing commission in the middle of the movie after Apollo gets killed. Mm-hmm. And he said, he's had one fight and one man is dead. And that's never in the movie. Mm-hmm. And he gives up his title to fight Drago, and it's there, but it's not as clear. And they didn't make it as clear this time, but it was clearer. It was just the first time a champ ever did this.
Right.
And my big question, and and he was very clear about this in his interviews with Mankiewicz, that he goes, I really just want to go faster, faster, faster. Mm-hmm. And he goes, and I realized that, I lost some of the things that go in a Rocky movie by going that fast. Mm-hmm. He said he really felt bad because Talia Shire and Adrian, he goes, I really cut her role, and her role is very powerful and impactful and important to the whole series.
Yeah, her role in the director's cut was phenomenal. I would have loved, even if they had kept the movie the way that it was and just added those scenes into the movie, would have been, I think for me would have been better. And that's kind of.
I'm gonna say something that goes right along with I love Jar Jar.
Yeah.
Is I actually think the ultimate cut of Rocky IV is put the robot back in.
Yeah, the robot was silly.
The robot is totally lame. Well, even he said
the robot was silly, but it is what it is at that time.
Yes. Yeah, and as I think about it, in Rocky V, when they had to sell all of his stuff, did they have to sell the robot? I didn't see the robot for sale.
I don't remember. Rocky V, I think I've seen it twice.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's not. I'm not a big fan of that.
Even he says he shouldn't have made Rocky V.
Yeah, that one wasn't that good of a movie.
So that's why Rocky Balboa redeemed that. But I thought the funeral scene
was great.
Dude, I was crying.
Yeah.
Because everything I have, everything my family has is because of you, and you took it. I mean, I'm getting emotional thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I thought the funeral scene was great. So here's the thing. So I think I've always had a problem with Rocky IV, even though I've seen it many times, and I kind of just love the final fight. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, it really is a movie of montages. It is an ode to MTV mm-hmm. and the Cold War. Yeah. I mean, it absolutely is. It is the most. It is not like Rocky 1 or 2. It's closer to 3, which this is where it gets interesting. So the first 2 Rockies are 2-hour movies.
Right.
And the first Rocky is absolutely drama with a fight at the end. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of drama in Rocky 2. And I think Rocky 1 and 2 get watched together. I mean, actually, if you had to get rid of all of them, Rocky 1 stands on its own. Rocky mm-hmm. 1, just Rocky. That is just it is probably the most successful independent film ever.
Yeah.
I mean, 28 days, of filming, and we're still talking about Rocky. Right. You're wearing the shirt.
Yeah.
And Rocky 2 fits that story, and I think that's why it starts the way. I mean, it starts at the hospital.
Sure.
I mean, it's great. It's all that. And then I thought the transition into Rocky 3 is good, but Rocky 3 moves pretty fast. I mean, we got Tony Wyman always says, "I love Rocky 3. I get a wrestling match and 2 fights."
Yeah.
And I had the script once for Rocky 3, and it was a 2-hour movie.
Uh-huh.
And the difference was when he went to L.A. to train with Apollo, he actually quit and went back to Philly. And so, the big scene where Adrian fights him on the beach, what are you afraid of?
Right.
That happens there, and that's when he decides to go back. But there's like this whole thing, and it even ties into the scene with when he's telling the stories, the fairy tales to his son.
Mm-hmm.
And so he has to tell his son, he goes, we're talking about Pinocchio's when we tell lies. He goes, well, I've been kind of a liar because this, and so I got to go take care of this.
Right.
And so, but Rocky 3 is a great movie, so I really can't complain. I mean, it really is. I mean, it gave the world Mr. T. What more do you need? And actually, if you think about it, it gave the world Hulk Hogan
as well. Yeah.
He was a bad guy, and he was so popular in that movie, he became a good guy.
Yeah. The ultimate male.
Yeah. And so on that note, that's why I want to go back. So I think the way that this works now is that Rocky 1 and 2 are their thing, and then Rocky 3 and 4 are their thing, because this really is a continuation of Rocky 3, especially given the prologue, which you think is too long. And it might be. And I think one of the reasons it's long is it's 35 years later, so he was getting back into the feel of it.
Yeah.
And I liked that it didn't have the fight between him and Apollo, because that's kind of nice. Honestly, if you were to end the Rocky series with that punch, that's like the perfect ending, right off into the sunset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the reason why I felt it was too long is to me, the Rocky beginnings, they have a formula, and it's always like a sped up cut version of the last fight. Here you go. You get just a tiny little bit of reminder of what was going on. You get the knockout or whatever, and then that fades off into what he's doing now. Even and Rocky 3, after the last fight with Apollo at the very beginning, and then it goes into where he's posing on the Muppet Show and all that. Even through
he's got the 3 years of him becoming a successful champ and defending his title.
Right. So I mean that follows that formula, and I think Indiana Jones 4 kind of has this problem too, because
he gets right into what the antagonism is going to be.
Right, exactly. Where in all the other movies there was always that he was on the tail end of an adventure, but with this one I was cool with the fight, but then when it stopped and it went back to it was almost like they were giving us a recap of Rocky 3. Like, you haven't seen it in so long, let me recap you here the last 20 minutes of this movie. And I was just kind of like, oh, man, I would have just been happy to hear the Rocky music, to see the Rocky logo.
By the way, that made no sense to me. Of all the stuff that they did, including music that was from the original 3 movies that was there, why did I mean, just the fanfare. I didn't need to put Gonna Fly Now. I mean, the training montages were there, but especially because they did the slow crawl across the screen.
Right. They could have did it. I think if they would have followed that formula, I would have been in a better mood to go forward with it. Like, okay, here we go. But it just took too long. I didn't need to see so much of Rocky 3 at the beginning of Rocky 4. Now, I guess I get it. They want to put you in the right mindset and everything, but I didn't need to be put in the mindset. I knew what happened. A little end of that fight, and then show me what's going on.
I think there was a piece that's missing from the first act because they killed off the robot of Apollo coming out, because that's kind of a jump cut from Apollo's swimming pool to they're talking outside of Rocky's mansion.
Yes.
And so we know what it is, but if you're watching it as a movie, there's no transition.
Right. And that's how
because originally that happened while they're washing the car, and he's like, "You coming here? Okay, what are you doing?" "Oh, I'm getting dizzy."
Right, and that was kind of how I felt throughout the whole director's cut. Is it just kind of like there was a lot of turns, and they just kind of forced you into this narrative that's going on where they want you to see what they're doing. Now the recut of the Apollo and Drago fight, I loved it. I thought it was great.
Oh yeah,
I really felt much better about that.
Didn't it seem better with the towel, like when he dropped it? Because it wasn't like he didn't throw it. It was more like there was no reason to throw it, and he knew.
Right. And I felt it.
But I think that scene's important because the way that they did it, because Adrian says to him, this won't happen if you don't back it.
Yeah.
And even Apollo knew it because he goes, I asked you to stand in my corner just one more time as my friend.
Right.
And you got to think of it from the character motivation. You know, how do you tell the guy that one gave you the shot twice and then redeemed your career that you're not going to do it? Mm-hmm. I mean, and so it made a lot of sense. I mean, it's good stuff. I mean, that's the thing is I don't know why it's not in the movie. I mean, as good as Rocky IV is and is the most successful Rocky movie that there is, I mean, monetarily, I would have been an incredible movie.
Yeah. I wouldn't have minded if they just made a 2.5-hour movie and just re-edited the fights. Because that's what I actually thought was going to happen. Is he went in, sped up some of the cuts in the fights and made them a little bit more dramatic, maybe changed some music, maybe changed some sound effects just to make it flow a little bit better. Now, I liked the fights and I liked everything. I still feel that the last fight still is too quick. I didn't feel
like it comes too quick?
Yeah, that it's not long enough. Like it could have... montage of each round going by, like I was hoping wouldn't have been in there, and they would have just given us more rounds.
Well, that's a hard one to do because then you got to change the music.
Well, then you change the music.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
I don't know,
but it was interesting though. Okay, so at the end fight, remember in the original cut, he just stands there with his arms up, and in this one, he jumped into Tony's arms, and I'm like, because. You're like, wow, why did you choose? Because that is better. And then in the original cut, the Soviet leadership all applauded. This one, they just walked out.
Right.
Which, by the way, I felt this was more realistic.
I did too.
And I was like, okay. I thought it's funny though, because you can tell how much time Paulie had with the robot because it's like once he agrees to fight, Paulie's back, and it's like, Paulie, those Adrian's earmuffs, they look better on me.
Yeah.
And it was like, but, oh, by the way, this is the one thing of all the one things I don't understand, it's a small thing. How come Paulie is no longer listening to the chipmunks while he's roasting the marshmallow?
I don't know.
Remember he was listening to the chipmunks in the original? It's not there now.
Yeah, I think maybe because it might have been silly.
But it's Paulie.
Yeah, I get it.
I mean, that's what I love about Paulie. Paulie is but he's actually just a sweetheart at the end of the day.
Sure, and I feel that Sylvester Stallone removed all of the silliness from the movie and made it more of a redemption feel.
Yeah. But Rocky's goofy.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Hey, what you ever think about investing in condominiums? Condominiums.
Yeah.
Never use them. And then, hey, little Marie, let there be light. Yeah. I mean, he's a goofball.
He is, and that's one of the reasons why I'm conflicted about this director's cut.
So I do suggest watching it again.
Yeah.
Because here's the weird thing is I read like 2 or 3 different reviews on it that brought out a bunch of stuff. I talked to you about it. I talked to Brandon about it. So I went in last night to go on, all right, maybe I was just way too excited to be watching Rocky in a movie theater.
Yeah.
And I'll even tell you, first time I saw Phantom Menace, I was way too excited to see Star Wars in a movie theater to look at it critically.
Yeah.
And by the way, it took me like 4 or 5 times to get over seeing Star Wars in a movie theater before I started looking at it critically.
Right.
And if I'm being very honest, I really didn't give it a harsh judgment until the whole thing was done. And I was like, this fell apart. Mm-hmm. No, I like it. I mean, I want to see the next director's cut with the robot back in.
Yeah. I want to see a good 2-hour, 20-minute cut. I loved the Adrian scenes. I thought those were great. It was, it's weird when you have these director's cuts because there are things that I remember from Rocky IV of him, of Drago getting ready to fight, and it was very mechanical and it felt very like new school compared to old school. And I didn't quite get that feeling this time around.
I'm going to throw this at you.
Yeah.
Do you think he cut the scenes with his ex-wife short?
Maybe.
Because she lost some lines.
She lost a lot.
My husband and I have been receiving threats.
Yeah.
She lost a lot of that stuff. She just kind of was there. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, is he like, yeah, I shouldn't have let her in the movie.
I just didn't feel the motivation of Drago wanting to fight Rocky first. I didn't feel that.
Oh, I thought that was more clear in the new one than the other one.
Really? I didn't.
Yeah.
I was
especially the Soviet manager guy, not the boxing manager, but the guy who was doing all.
Right.
He's like, this man is a husband.
Mm-hmm.
So, and by the way, that guy is great because he's not even Russian. He just does accents, and they were talking about him. He goes, "Yeah, we found him." He goes, and he was so great. He goes, "I just kept writing more lines for him."
Yeah.
So, but what's interesting though? It's so funny to see Paulie get reduced because I think Paulie is as important to everything else, especially when you get to Rocky Balboa and just that, like they're the only two who are still in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and Paulie was his friend and, set him up with Adrian and all this other stuff, weird way to set somebody up, but that's Paulie.
Yeah.
But other than Rocky, I want to say, so Rocky got the Best Picture award at the Academy Awards for 1976 movies. Burt Young got Best Supporting Actor for Paulie in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and in the first movie, Paulie is an absolute jerk.
Yeah.
And you never really lose that. Paulie and Apollo are probably the most consistent characters throughout the series.
Right.
I mean, even him doing his hair in the ring.
Right.
So, and I almost feel bad for saying this, but I was like singing along to "Living in America."
Yeah.
I mean, I was actually just kind of enjoying James Brown. I'm like, and there's a part of me was like, dude, James Brown's in a Rocky movie.
Yeah, they extended that whole song out a lot.
Yeah. But it was funny though. There's things they cut, like Paulie being afraid and he grabbed the skull head, so you only see him holding the skull head, and then like the dancing girls and Adrian's like, "What?" and Rocky's like, "I ain't looking." Right. And I'm like, "Why'd you cut that?" And I'm
like when he looks and when he tilts his head and looks
and he's like, "Oh,
at the dancer. Yeah."
And then Duke is like smiling, going, "Oh man, Apollo, come on."
Yeah, I felt the stakes were high. Much more during that fight than I did in the original Rocky IV. Like, I guess to sum it up, the things that I liked about it were I liked the addition of the Adrian scenes. I thought those brought a lot more heart to Rocky and to the decision making and to even Rocky's motivation of like, hey, I understand what you're saying, but I'm going to do this anyway. And him going off, and then when she shows up, I felt much more like of her support when she shows up. Like I felt it, much better. So I love those additional scenes. I thought the fight, the recuts of the fights was better. I liked the Apollo Drago fight. I thought that was really good. How they did that. How they different camera angles and did some different things with that to make you feel good. I liked the last Rocky Drago fight. I thought that was good. I think now on the things that I think could have been better, I think they didn't have to cut so much out. I would have liked to have seen a longer cut.
The first act is right. Basically, anything that had a robot went.
Yeah. And the robot is silly. I get it, but I think if they had kept the robot in but changed some of the Adrian scenes and did what they did, I think I would like to see that cut.
Yeah. And so so to his credit though, to Stallone's credit, there's a lot of directors out there who decide that they're going to give you an extended cut by putting scenes in. Like, oh yeah, we have all this extra footage. Let's give you the extended cut so you buy another DVD. Mm-hmm. Is he really went out and made another movie?
Sure, he recut.
He didn't. So yes, and so it wasn't like because that would have been the easy fix. I think this was the harder fix.
Yes, and I like what he did. I have both versions now. I bought them. I bought it on iTunes. After you had saw it, I went on iTunes and there it was. So I bought it and I watched it that night. So I was ready to go that next morning when I text you.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was explaining it to Stephanie. I said they're two different movies, yet they're the same story.
Right.
And I guess you could probably say a thing about any movie. What if George Lucas shoots Star Wars and Steven Spielberg edits it? Mm-hmm. I mean, you wouldn't see the movie you see today.
Right.
And so, but I like Rocky with more heart. This one has always bothered me because it was more. I mean, I mean, that's the same year Rambo 2 came out,
Mm-hmm.
and but that was peak Stallone. I
Yeah.
mean, Rocky, Rambo, Cobra, which why they never made a sequel to that is beyond me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if Cobra's a great movie, but Cobra is the perfect movie for the times.
Cobra, I loved that movie at the time. I bought it on iTunes. It was like, really cheap. I bought it and I was watching it a few months ago. It doesn't hold up so much the test of time, but it's a great nostalgia feel, as you're watching it. I enjoyed it. I liked Cobra.
Yeah, no, I like a lot of the stuff that Stallone does, and I really think that it was interesting because I don't know if I told you this. If I did, it was on text, but I think I might have been holding it back for the show. So when Mankiewicz was talking to Stallone about the Rocky movies and all this stuff, and he's like, they offered me 300. He goes, I was so poor at the time that I had to sell my dog. He goes, Butkus, who winds up in the movie. He goes, which there's really no reason to have him in the movie other than I was able to buy him back, so I put him in the movie.
Yeah.
He said, but he goes, I couldn't afford dog food anymore, and if I didn't get rid of him, he was going to eat me. And he goes, I went in and I told him I had this idea for a script for a movie, and they're like, oh really? And then he goes, I went home and I wrote it, and he came back with it, and they're like, all right, we'll give you $300,000 for the script, of which that's 1975 money. So I mean 300,000 today. I mean, whoa.
Yeah.
And he held out and he said no. And he said it's weird because like you're turning down a lot of money. He goes, that would have made me in one way.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, but something told me I had to do it.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, and that's kind of interesting because there's those moments in your life. He goes, and that comes out in Rocky 4. Like when he's talking to the son, he goes, everyone's going to think that you're wrong for what you're doing, but you got to do it right. And by the way, that scene with the son, the extended scene is much better, but Rocky Jr. got screwed.
Yeah.
And so, so he's talking about the different movies, and then he got to Rocky Balboa, and he goes, I had this idea for Rocky Balboa. And they're like, Rocky 5 flopped. He goes, that's why it took me 16 years to do it. He said, and it's like, he goes, they weren't wrong. He said, but he goes, I got him to come along and we did it. But, and this is weird as, to unpaid extras and at ringside, he said that was his favorite Rocky movie to direct. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it was good. I think, if you have to choose stars, if you were to go like a 5 stars, I'd probably give it a 3. The new director's cut a 3. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably give it about an 7.5, 8. I mean, I liked it. I just think that I would have liked to just seen a little bit things different.
Let me ask you this.
I didn't hate it.
Okay, so someone, one of your children, Dad, I want to watch Rocky movies. Mm-hmm. So here's Rocky 1, here's Rocky 2, here's Rocky 3. You get to Rocky 4. Which version do you show?
I would probably show them Rocky 4, and then at another time show them the director's cut.
Okay, so you're an originalist to the end.
Yeah,
kind of like you watch Star Wars, Empire, Jedi, then you can worry about the other stuff.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. By the way, I got no time for people to do otherwise.
No, it's supposed to be.
Yeah, but for me, this is my Rocky 4 now. This is my Rocky 4.
Okay,
now.
Good.
Well, I mean, it doesn't mean I'm not going to go back and watch it. It's just always kind of. Now, what's funny is just going back to our childhood. There's 2 Rocky 4 things that come to mind. Is when we were in junior high when it came out, I remember like getting up in the morning and jogging with you around like the track in your backyard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that cheesy weight set I had, lifting weights. I should have stuck with it then tried to learn how to do it now.
During that point.
Oh yeah, we were and then and then the gloves, the fingers, the weightlifting gloves.
I remember I cut socks. I cut holes in socks.
Oh yes,
and I would stick my fingers through the socks. And I had in our spare room we had a mattress, and I would stick the mattress up against the wall. And I'd punch the mattress.
I do remember that now. I'm so glad you bring that up. And then, but it was that Christmas, or it was the next Christmas. So our neighbor Jerry gave me the Rocky 4 VHS for a Christmas gift.
Nice. Yeah,
So,
I think I got Witness.
yeah. I need to watch that again.
I just watched it a few months ago.
Holds up?
It holds up. Good movie.
There's something cool about, there are certain people, and I think Stallone's one of them, but Harrison Ford is definitely one of them. You just like to see them on the big screen.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, well, it's interesting. It's funny because I was really thinking about this before we came on here, was that as much as Star Wars ties us together, Rocky really ties you and I together.
Yeah.
More so than there's no Tony here today.
Right.
And so like when I see Rocky stuff, when I send the group text, it's you, me, and Dusty.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So.
I think Rocky definitely is. It's our thing for what we have, and I think we went through a lot of those phases and everything together. Listening to the soundtracks. I mean, I listened to those stupid soundtracks an ungodly amount of time.
I will tell you right now. So I have like certain playlists saved on my phone for when I'm working out, and I have on here my Rocky playlist for working out. By the way, this is really good when you got to do a ton of cardio. So I'm gonna go to the playlist and give you. So now I hit shuffle, so I'm not going to get it the same order every time.
Sure.
So I got Gonna Fly Now, Going the Distance, and then just because I like Frank, I got Take You Back. Conquest. What did you think about it? Conquest is the fight song for Rocky 2, 3, and Balboa.
Yeah.
And then I got the overture from Rocky 2, which is the Rocky fanfare at the beginning of that and some other stuff. Then Eye of the Tiger, Hearts on Fire, and the training montage from Rocky 4. And I got to tell you, man, when a couple of those songs come on, and you'd think that after all these years, I could not listen to the Eye of the Tiger anymore.
Oh, no. I still love listening to that.
Yeah. And
there are two kinds of love that you
want to know. Hey, it's the bum for the Ducks. Get a job, you bum. I'm gonna use a bad word. I'm gonna use a bad word here. Whore. Yeah. You don't have to be a whore. You say, screw you, creepo. Good insult lasts a long time.
That's right.
I love the part, by the way, in Rocky Balboa when he's giving her a ride home and those punks in the bar are saying stuff to her. And he goes, oh, yeah. And then he goes, no, little Marie, it ain't all right. And he goes back. And I'm like, he's just such a good guy.
I loved Rocky Balboa.
Yeah.
Great soundtrack for that one. They never released a soundtrack, but a lot of music they used in that movie was music. You could make your own soundtrack by popping in songs from the original movies. That's
kind of how I made that playlist. I bought the songs I wanted. And by the way, going back to Creed, so the thing that especially with the first Creed movie, and so I guess about 4 or 5 years ago, I'm in Philadelphia with Tony Wyman, and we went to the restaurant that was Adrian's. And in the back of the restaurant is the painting from the credits of Rocky 3.
Nice.
And so Stallone, when he was in Philly this last week, he came in and said hi to everybody in the restaurant. Nice. He goes, oh, welcome to Adrian's. Nice. And like, ah. And so it's that painting's still hanging back there. But so, literally, like where Drago and Rocky sit in Creed 2 is like, those like Wyman are like, dude, that was our table. And so it's just like, and then we go to the alley where he's like, it don't matter how hard life hits you, you got to keep moving. We're like in that alley, and like Tony and I are doing like a live video on Facebook, and some kid lives nearby. He goes, trying to take out the trash. 2 idiots are doing the Rocky thing in the alley again. But it was just so cool to be there. But when Adonis comes to visit Rocky and they're talking in the restaurant, he goes, I heard there was a third fight between you and Apollo. And he goes, who won? He goes, he did. And there was something about that finally getting revealed that way. I always liked the idea that it was a draw, but I was like, yeah, Apollo was the better fighter. I mean, he really was. I mean, when it came to the skills, Rocky was just like, immovable. I saw you beat that man like I've never saw any man get beat, and the man kept coming after you. Yeah. Well, that's that is a great scene in Rocky 2 when he tells me, let it go.
But that's what I think I like about Rocky wasn't necessarily the best fighter, but when he had his moments, when he pulled through in those moments, that's what made him extraordinary. He went beyond what a normal person can do to do the extraordinary, and I think that's what makes him such a great character.
It was awesome. And then, but going back to Creed, so the fact that the first time there's Rocky music is when he gets up off the canvas in that fight. I thought that was done so well because I'm like, because there could have been easy, cheap fan service. There was plenty of it in there, but it wasn't cheap. It was there. But when Adonis got up after looking like he was done, and the going the distance theme, it felt like it was earned.
Yeah.
And you could tell that when they made that movie, Ryan Coogler, that they actually cared about what they were telling. And the weird part is this, because like there was a part of me is like I didn't like the idea of Apollo having illegitimate. So the new cut where his life is like in a weird way, kind of like I kind of get it now.
Yeah. Give a little bit of legitimacy to it.
Yeah, and then you juxtapose that about this whole thing about the warrior and the warrior ethos, and the warrior has to fight. And here's a guy who's a warrior who's playing with his golden retrievers in a swimming pool.
Yeah,
and so and I always thought that was like a cool scene that he was doing that, but he's bored. And I mean, it goes back to Rocky 3. Listen, to that, it's too quiet when you retire. But right. So Sylvester Stallone, if you wind up watching this just because you've got nothing to do on, or one of your daughters is looking for stuff that people are talking about in your movies, we would love to see Rocky 3 on the big screen.
Yes.
And we would love to be your guests when you do it.
Absolutely. And you don't have to pay us anything. We'll figure it out from our ends.
We'll buy you some We'll buy you some popcorn.
That's right.
And we'll keep punching. And that's right.
Yeah. Floyd, I appreciate it, man. This is a great.
I'm emotional. This it feels like we're talking about a member of our family.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you just like Star Wars, and yet when you spend this much time of our life invested in these characters, they do become family. So
yes,
And
I will say that Rocky Balboa and Adrian are probably one of the best screen couples ever.
Absolutely.
I mean, you actually feel like they're married.
Absolutely. And I think this cut did them justice.
Absolutely. So,
Floyd, thank you. I appreciate it.
Welcome, Mr. Prisco. Always a pleasure.
Always. Maybe at some point we'll get together and do another thing here. So I appreciate your time.
I'm always good. I'm going to be traveling next week. I don't know when this is going up, but I hope you and your family have a very happy Thanksgiving. That'll be next week. So
yeah, you too.
All right.
I'll talk to you soon.
Until then, keep punching.
That's right.
All right. Cool.
We did it.